You, statistically likely to be a Deltarune fan and by extension perhaps like indie games in general. Do you like story-heavy RPGs? Do you like Faustian bargains and monkey's paws? Are you a fan of games where people get trapped and die? Do you like media with shiny art styles and colorful character designs that are actually fucked up and tragic? How about stories with mysterious premises that slowly drip-feed you intriguing but out-of-context details before satisfyingly revealing what's been going on the whole time, and when you go back and re-experience it, you can spot all the delicious foreshadowing? Do you like fancy outfits and fantasy aesthetics? Or beautiful pixel art in general? Banger, royalty-free music? Do you like meta-narratives? It's not explicit or anything, but there's kind of a meta-narrative going on here. There's a fishing minigame. Do you have a wish you'd be willing to kill for? They say that a lot. Witch's Heart is a story-focused adventure game with light action, horror, and puzzle elements. It's also one of my favorite things ever, so this video is me pitching it to you. The game follows a young, blue-haired and pronouned woman named Claire who gets trapped in an allegedly cursed witch's mansion where she meets 4 highly suspicious and similarly color-coded men and later some demons, all while they try to find the wish-granting treasure, the Witch's Heart. The story explores themes like misfortune and trauma, empathy, and selfishness versus selflessness. After completing the prologue, you get to choose between 2 scenarios to play through, each of them being assigned to one of the 4 men. Ash, an eccentric and curious traveler, Willardo, a stoic florist, Sirius, the mansion's distrusting owner, and Noel, a shy nocturnal man. Each scenario is also associated with one of the 4 main demons: Charlotte, whose weapon of choice is scissors; Ziesel, Claire's, guide; Lime, responsible for half the game's content warnings; and my personal favorite demon, triple question mark. Each man will become the secondary protagonist of his own scenario as the story shifts perspectives fairly often. While you can choose between doing either Ash's or Willardo's scenario first, they're both good, but I personally think Ash's is a better introduction to the rest of the game. You'll have to do Sirius's third and Noel's last, as each scenario builds on the game's mysteries more and more and weaves together a complete story. The way the game conceals key information about the characters even as it shifts perspectives is very impressive and only adds to the intrigue. While Witch's Heart does reveal itself to be a pretty dark story, it's not actually a bait and switch like Madoka Magica or Doki Doki, which I compared it to. Although for different reasons, if you like Madoka, you really need to play this. It doesn't pretend to be cutesy or anything so it can surprise you, it's just genuinely silly and fun with a pretty art style, and it balances this with darker elements. A great example of this is Claire's characterization. She's a very carefree and happy-go-lucky woman who loves pretty things and breaks down doors with her fists and wants to be worshipped as a goddess of beauty and whatnot. And this is delightful, but it also makes it so that when the plot gets really serious, you can feel it in how she specifically becomes more subdued, while some of the other characters were never that cheery to begin with. Even then, the game manages to make her positivity and empathy refreshing instead of annoying. She's exactly what the game needs. Unlike some other people, Claire doesn't seem like she has much to hide, but that doesn't mean there aren't more great aspects of her character that I can't talk about. This game is really frustrating to talk about because the best part of its story is the writing of its characters and their relationships, but much like the greater premise, I can't really get into them at all without utterly spoiling the game. It's just that type of story. So I'm giving up. I'm gonna spoil the prologue for you. It's not that big a deal. Although I still think the story is best experienced as blind as possible, so if you're already convinced to play the game, I'd stop watching here. It's free, there's a link to where you can download it in the description, as well as a no commentary playthrough. There are a lot of storybooks named Witch's Heart, all by completely different authors, but they all share the same element that the Witch's Heart can grant wishes. How interesting. Claire finds the mansion while seeking shelter from the rain, where she runs into an interesting traveler named Ash, whose hyperness leaves even her speechless. As he's talking her ear off, a third guy called Willardo waltzes into the mansion like he owns the place, so they follow him in. Claire briefly enters the 7th circle of hell and meets a key-smashing flesh monster, but then she plops right out into the mansion. Turns out Willardo's just a trespasser, but none of them can untrespass now because not only is the mansion locked, but it's in the fucking sky. The 3 split up to search, and Claire stumbles into a suspiciously long magic hallway where she meets the demon Charlotte, who immediately tries to chase her down and kill her. Then she finds Noel, who came late to the getting trapped in the haunted mansion party. The others come to tell them that they found the owner, Sirius, who's just as out of the loop as they are and wants them all to fuck off. He refuses Noel's request to talk to him in private until Noel mentions the witch Dorothy, who Sirius seems to respect. While those two are gone, Ash tells Claire that Dorothy allegedly kidnapped and killed over 100 people 12 years ago. A great role model indeed. They come back and Sirius has been convinced to give them all conveniently color-coded rooms to stay in. He also warns them to never trade rooms, like seriously, don't do it, it'll be really bad. Wasn't planning on it before, but we should totally trade rooms now, says Ash as creepy music starts playing. You're easily able to go back to this choice to see what happens, but I chose not to trade because I'm not stupid. Ash explains that he's heard a rumor the witch Dorothy lived in the mansion. No way, really? And suspects that Claire's room was hers. At this point, you can go to all the guys' rooms and play minigames with them, like sorting flowers and gambling. But to progress the story, you'll need to go to Sirius's room and read his books on demonic pacts, in which powers are granted to humans in exchange for a kilometer of land and a body part. Curious. Now that Claire's up to speed on the lore, the demon Ziesel appears in her room to tell her that, oh, by the way, she's in one of those. But I don't remember entering a contract, says Claire. I was found all alone in a cardboard box. Well, naturally. Claire's a visual learner, so Ziesel makes this diagram to explain that some dead guy put her in the contract, and she won't be taking any further questions at this time. By the way, you can access Ziesel through the menu now, and she'll give you hints about what you need to do to progress the story. I completely forgot this was a feature on my first playthrough, and it's really helpful because sometimes it's kinda unclear what to do next. Alternatively, you can just use the walkthrough on VG Person's website, there's no shame in it. Sirius comes in to take a mysterious diary from Claire's room and also to tell her that her character design ain't cutting it, so he lends her a nice dress. She goes to bed and has one of her strange recurring dreams about a little girl named Patricia who seems to have disappeared from her life when she was a child, but Claire can't remember this girl at all. The prologue ends, prompting you to select a scenario. And the game only gets so much better from there. Please play it, please, it's so good, please. I remembered something else I wanted to mention, and that's how obvious the passion pouring out of this game is. Just look at this movie maker-ass opening, it's so extra. The creator obviously loves these characters a lot, and that's most clear through how they're like well-written and empathetic and thought-provoking and just genuinely fun, but also, this game really likes to put these funky guys in pretty outfits. Like, aside from the vast amounts of official art and that one bit where they cosplay Alice in Wonderland, there's even a gameplay feature later on that's kind of dedicated to putting them in special outfits. Also, you know how like in visual novels and games with a similar kind of visual format, sometimes it stops putting on a puppet show with the sprites and switches to an image that takes up the whole screen? Usually this is done to either show something happening that can't be communicated as well with the sprites, or just to emphasize an important moment, and I think it's called a CG. Witch's Heart has a ton of these. I've never seen a game that uses them this often, and it really goes to show just how much effort was put into it. In many cases, it's for things that could have been expressed just fine through the sprites alone, but the creator decided to go the extra mile, and the game really benefits from it. The story has so many great moments, and this just makes them stick in your head all the more. Finally, now that I'm running out of things to say other than just play the game, dude, trust me, I thought I'd read some responses from fans on Tumblr when I asked what they liked about the game. It does a good job on how it portrays different characters' morals and their views on why something is/isn't moral. The whole game is about do the ends justify the means if you wanted to boil it down to a phrase, and truly, it doesn't. They know it doesn't. There's a lot about morality and how it's perceived on the outside, as well as how someone's misdeeds can be twisted and covered up, how someone can become quote-unquote good despite being the most horrible person ever, and how someone else can be remembered as bad because of a lack of information that's twisted to fit a narrative. I just really like how it's done in Witch's Heart. It never says you have to like any of the mansion members or what they're doing, or even any of the demons, but IZ makes a point to have you go through each route to see why they do what they do, and to make your own decision from there. For me, the characters are a big part of why I like the game. They have a lot of depth and personality, they all have their own motives and backstories for you to uncover, and the character design slaps. There are so many routes to play through, and seeing other characters' perspectives is really interesting. Love a good twist on a murder mystery with fun and wacky characters. Also, the way the game builds its mystery via each scenario slowly, keeping the player in suspense for more until it all becomes clear. Claire Elford is an amazing protagonist. She's like the definition of kindness is strength. She has so much love in her, and she's my favorite female fictional character. Claire's canonically one of the physically strongest in the cast, yet still very openly and happily girly, which I think is lovely to see. If you like recurring themes and foils/parallels, you will eat up this game. Noelle Levine. The way that the creator works each individual character's story into the main plot is very, very cohesive and works for each of them. The main thing I like about the game is the sheer amount of foreshadowing that goes into it, to the point where even someone like me who's been into the game for 3 years now, I'm still able to pick up on things I never noticed. Okay, we're done here, you can go play the game now. Thanks for watching. I know this isn't really what people subscribed for, so I don't expect it to do as well, but since I now have a bigger internet audience than ever before, I had to at least try to fulfill my duty of getting people to play Witch's Heart. Next time I'll be back to Deltarune with a video about Toriel and Asgore, so I hope you'll stay tuned.